I am 20 female, have recently moved out of my mother's house for college. I enrolled in scholarship. The other night, my mother wanted her, my younger brother, and I to have dinner together. It's been a while since we've spoken, and I'm afraid this might happen again. We were having a nice night, the dinner was delicious, and honestly, we were all having a good time. Eventually, we got onto the topic of how things were when I was younger. I made the comment on how her behavior when I was younger made me feel like I missed out on a lot of things as a child. She disagrees, and tells me that I'm being dramatic, and that my childhood was perfect. Quote, I was lucky to have a mom who cared as much as she did. My mother gave birth to me when she was 18. My father walked out when I was young, due to a personal conflict between the two. So, she raised me on her own until I was 7. She met a guy, and they ended up having a kid together, my younger brother. He was a golden child to my mom. His father was only a temporary item, as he left as well, soon after. Although the father of my brother was still visible in his life, I didn't have anyone to look up to as a father figure. Eventually, my mom went through a phase of depression after they separated. She started to care less and less about her children, and more about her parties and men she wanted to sleep with. It ended up getting so bad that by the time I was 10, I was a full-time caretaker of my younger brother. With the exceptions of the weekends he was with his father. I started to cook, clean, do everyone's laundry, and take care of everything outside of the boundaries of my home. From ages 13 to 15 I began missing out and losing good friends because I wasn't able to participate in any activity related to anyone else. I didn't get a car or a phone until I was 18, and even then I wasn't allowed to leave my house. I graduated senior year with flying colors and ended up getting a scholarship to a really good college. I took this opportunity not only to focus on myself, but to also help my mother realize that I was not going to be around forever. When she found out I got the scholarship, she threw a fit and told me I wasn't allowed to leave my responsibilities here at home. I left a week after the conversation. I did make sure that my younger brother was safe with his second guardian at the time. My mother and I talked on some occasions but never really kept contact. We got together, and you know the story. She told me I am an asshole for saying that she never really took care of me or my younger brother. I told her that eventually, she will need to get help and stop victimizing herself. But I'm starting to feel guilty, and that maybe I was dramatic after all. I've officially decided that I no longer need my mother in my life at this point in time. I'm now going to only focus on myself, and working towards a successful career in law. Of course, my mom won't take it well, but it won't really matter to her in the long run. Her children never really mattered to her. I'm going to stay in contact with my younger brother, though. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't possibly go through the same amount of trauma I did. My son is almost 17. This Christmas we bought him an expensive computer gaming chair, as he plays a lot of online multiplayer shooters. My son has some anger issues, which he's currently in therapy for, and these shooters tend to bring out his temper more than normal. However, for the past few months he's been keeping it together well, so I figured the chair might be a fair present. I was wrong, because the day after Christmas he was gaming, started to have bad luck. He was losing his patience. This culminated in him screaming insults and then picking up his chair and slamming it into the ground, breaking the back of it. After talking him down, we had a very serious conversation about him no longer being allowed to play multiplayer games while under my roof until his therapist feels comfortable with his progress, talked about coping mechanisms, etc. However, I made it very clear this was unacceptable and he would be grounded. We've had these heart-to-hearts many times, so it's not like every time he has an outburst I'm making light of it. It's a serious issue and treated like such. However, when he came to me later that day and told me he'd like me to replace the chair because it was a gift, he really liked it and it would only be fair, the frustration, disbelief and disappointment in his behavior boiled over and I started laughing hysterically. As in a full laughing fit, barely able to breathe or talk. The more he'd plead his case, the harder I'd laugh. Repeatedly asking him how it was fair in his mind to have me replace a gift I paid for that he broke in anger. This obviously pissed him off more, which led to him getting emotional, but I just couldn't seem to stop myself. I tried walking out of the room and asking him to drop it, but every time he'd say, "But I need a chair." Or what am I supposed to do now? I'd laugh again. I tried explaining that I'm not laughing at his feelings. I'm laughing at how absurd it is for him as a teenager to expect me to replace he can't be bothered to treat with respect, and then whine about it when he broke it. He's still pissed about it, and feels slighted. I feel bad for laughing, and honestly wonder if I had some sort of mini stress break myself. Because it's never happened before and I couldn't seem to stop. But at the same time, I stand by the fact that his request was ridiculous enough to make most people want to laugh. I am a 39 years old male, and I lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I wasn't offered any help, just words. They'd just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I've created an account for my son's college fund and kept putting whatever I could get at the time, and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I can't express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son and as a way to remember him, and we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mom agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to someone else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. Thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision, and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and ending up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mom calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this. Dan and I have been married for 3 years and 8 months ago welcomed our amazing son into the world. He was very planned and wanted, and motherhood had been transformative for me. I was able to take for 1/2 months maternity leave before going back to work. Without going into too many details, we both work white-collar jobs that require professional attire. A normal workday look for me is a skirt or pair of slacks, a silk blouse, pumps or boots depending on the weather. But always with a heel because I'm 5'0", maybe a blazer if I have a big meeting. Dan wears a suit almost every day. I also style my hair and do some makeup for work every day. This is what I wore before our son was born and what I continue to wear. Dan and I are pretty even in sharing parenting duties. I tend to take mornings because I'm more of a morning person than Dan. A normal morning for me starts early: short workout, shower, get baby up, get ready. Get baby ready and baby off to Dan because the daycare is on Dan's way to work. I'm normally dressed at the tail end of this process, but I keep my robe on over my clothes in case my son wants to give my outfit something to remember him by on our way out the door. For the last month or so, Dan has been more irritable than normal in the morning. There have been side comments if he gets up and I'm drying my hair or getting dressed. Basically, if I'm not 100% focused on my son in the AM. Our son is happy playing and supervised, so I just chalked it up to morning moodiness, but it's been getting worse. Last night, I brought it up in what I thought was a neutral, non-confrontational way. Basically, his answer was this: his mom was 100% a mom after her kids were born. She gained a fair amount of weight after she had kids and never tried to lose it. She wore sweatpants every day and works a job where she wears a uniform, so if she wasn't in her work uniform she was in sweats and a t-shirt. She never did her hair or makeup. Her entire identity was being a mom, and she shared with me how hard it was to watch her kids start their own lives. Dan thinks I don't care about our son as much as he does since I worked on losing the baby weight and still put effort into my appearance. I feel like keeping this part of my identity actually helps me be a better mother. I love my son, but I'm still me and I still have the things I like to do. Dressing well, my identity actually helps me be a better mother. I love my son, but I'm still me and I still have the things I like to do. Dressing well, blowing out my hair and doing my makeup are therapeutic to me. Now that being said, my son is my life, and if I knew that not doing those things but guarantee him a happy, healthy life, I would stop immediately. I told Dan that my son and I have our morning routine and he gets lots of time and attention before I go to the office. Dan said he wasn't looking to fight, but he just wanted me to think about my priorities and my time management.